Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Run in the Paint podcast. I'm Miles here with Ben and Nick. Guys, how are you doing today?
Feeling good, feeling great. Happy to be back with y'all. Ben, what's going on, my man? How you doing? Ready for the finals?
Yeah, I'm doing good, feeling well myself, and I'm hyped for the finals and need to enjoy this hopefully good product of basketball while lasts. It's the last we got this season.
That's right. The 2026 NBA Finals begin on Wednesday. It's almost here, and we are going to basically spend the entire episode previewing, breaking down, giving our predictions for what we think is going to happen in the series. Unfortunately, no Joey today. The internet was not being kind to our veteran Joey, but we're going to run the three-man weave here and hopefully do it at the level of these two teams in the finals. First, before we get into talking about the finals, let's go ahead and do Pirtle since this is a Tuesday podcast. First player we're gonna guess. We wanted to guess someone that's in this finals that's played for a lot of teams to try to give us as many options as possible. We're gonna go with Kelly Olynyk. Don't expect to see him a whole lot in the series. Let's see what he can help us with. And okay, he gets us nothing highlighted. But that doesn't mean that we can't take anything away from this. Eastern Conference player that wears a smaller jersey number.
Okay, jersey
Um,
number helps.
yeah, it definitely does help. Lower than 6. I mean, Deuce McBride fits, and he's on the other team that's playing in the finals.
Ah,
Yes, he
maybe
does.
not
You want
bad.
to try him?
It was just the
I
first
mean,
guy I thought of.
legitimately, it could be any of those guys. I mean, any of
Yeah,
these guys is probably a Hail Mary.
Well, see if Deuce McBride's
good
standing in
chance
the end
to
zone.
guard. We'll do it.
Nope.
All right.
All
Okay.
right.
Number 3 or number 4, not in the Atlantic Division, and he is not 6'3", so probably a shooting guard sort of player. 6'4", 6'5", number 3 or number 4.
Not in the Atlantic.
Yep, central or southeast.
So this is not Boston, Philly, Toronto, or Brooklyn.
Number 3 or number
Oh,
4?
wait, this might be Desmond Bain.
On the Orlando Magic, 26, 27 years old. Could be right there. Yeah, that could be right. We want to try Desmond Bain. I think that could be right on the money.
Yeah, let's do it.
Good guess, Ben.
Desmond Bain in
Yeah,
three. Number
yeah.
3 in 3.
Oh
Desmond
yeah.
Bain, who was traded to Orlando around the finals last season, ends up being our Pirtle player for today. So let us know how long it took you guys to get Desmond Bain. But now let's finally talk about the 2026 NBA Finals. New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs. Who would have thought it would come down to this? The Knicks were one of the co-favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference in the preseason. During the regular season, it went up and down, and they've been, I think, the best team in the playoffs. They've won their last 11 games and have been completely dominant so far, while the Spurs began the season, all of us were here. We're like, man, it'd be a successful season if they had just made the playoffs, maybe won one singular series. And now here they are getting to host the NBA Finals. And they, of course, they just beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, reigning champions, in 7 games. And my goodness, Ben, we've got ourselves a matchup with a ton of incredible storylines, terrific individual matchups, great fan bases. Where do you want to start with talking about this matchup?
Yeah, you're right about the fan bases. It's gonna be great atmospheres in both arenas, and um, well, start in different spots, but I guess let's start with the guard play. Uh, yeah, like you know, Spurs guards have defended pretty well throughout the playoffs. Can they do a good job with finding ways to slow down Brunson like they were able to do with SGA at times? I know Joey was wanting us to bring it up on the podcast. So, what are we thinking about that?
Well, they figured it out against the reigning MVP. But this Knicks offense is loaded right now. They're looking like a different animal than sort of the banged up defending champs that the Spurs just played in the last round. So they're gonna need to come up with something different, I think, than what they use to, load up on Shea and get the ball out of his hands and make everybody else sort of around them beat you. Because, you know, I gotta give Mike Brown and the Knicks some credit here. Their offense is just absolutely humming, and they really don't necessarily have a weak link through 9, 10, 11 guys right now. They're all playing really well. They're all locked in, playing their best. So I think my approach going in would just be make everything as difficult as possible. They're a great defensive team. Sort of lean into that identity and trust that sort of thing. Specific coverages, like in ball screens, when it comes down to Jalen, like you're gonna have to mix up the coverages, make him beat you in different ways, and make him make the right read and make the right read different, so that he doesn't have the same thing just over and over and over. Just like I said, yeah, make it as difficult as you can, and play 3-on-4 on the backside, and live with difficult shots and try and get the rebound and go the other way.
Yeah, I think where I'd want to start talking about this matchup kind of relates to that with how the Spurs are gonna handle this Knicks offense. How are they gonna handle this moment? Again, this is their first time going through the playoffs, and they're here in the NBA Finals, hosting the finals, the favorite to win the series and win the title. It's been a magical season for them. And we, that experience thing, the fact they haven't had experience, I brought it up a whole lot throughout the playoffs, and it hasn't really mattered that much so far up to this point. But now in the NBA Finals, playing games at Madison Square Garden on the league's biggest stage, how is this team going to handle it? And how are those young guards going to be able to handle it? When you look at Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, obviously Victor Wembanyama, the number one name. It's still incredible that he's here in the finals in just his third year in the league. And I think all the points about the fact that they have to go up against this Knicks offense, which has been historically great. I mean, you look at the numbers that they put up in the playoffs. They have the best offensive rating, the best defensive rating, the most points per game. They average 120 points per game in the playoffs. Number one in field goal percentage, number one in 3-point percentage, number one in assists. I mean, this team is just absolutely humming right now. And of course, the storyline going into game one of this series, which is on Wednesday, 8:30 on ABC. It's going to be the thing that's come up, each of the last few series for them, the rest versus rust factor, because New York hasn't played since last Monday, game 4 of the Cleveland series. And they haven't, even though they've been playing so dominant, they haven't had to play a whole lot of basketball over the last month or so in comparison to the Spurs. So how are the Knicks going to look in game 1? How are the Spurs going to handle this moment? I think it's all incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, it sure is interesting, and I think the rest advantage is big for New York. We're trying to get back healthy here for this, and yeah, the Spurs, they will have good confidence for being the Thunder. The Western Conference Finals is more recently play that could come out of the gates in the game more hot. We in like game 1, we seen them get off to strong starts in most of the games against the Thunder and the Western Conference Finals. So, but I mean, you don't totally want to count out the Knicks. I mean, the Spurs aren't the Cavs, but the Knicks, it's crazy that game 1 against the Cavs. It's how they made that insane comeback. So I mean, the Knicks, interested in seeing they could go on any huge runs at all against Spurs that could give them trouble in this series, and see how much big timely shots they could knock down in this one, like they've done well so far up to this point in the playoffs as New York.
Yeah, so looking at these two teams and looking at kind of the individual matchups, at least with their starting lineups, I mean, of course, these two teams, their lineups are so good. Everyone on the floor is a threat, in their own different ways. The Knicks being led by Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, that all-star duo, but their surrounding pieces have been playing about as well as they've ever played with this Knicks team. When you look at what Mikal Bridges has been doing, OG Anunoby, and Josh Hart, how well those guys have been gelling together. Really, everything has changed since Mike Brown switched the offense and had Towns be more of a point center, a lot more ball movement, injected into their offense. And for the Spurs, it's Victor Wembanyama leading the way. He's been absolutely unbelievable, and they just have a lot of other great offensive threats. I mean, looking at their numbers in the playoffs, they've got 6 guys that average 13 points or more in the playoffs, which is just absolutely incredible. Actually, 5 guys, and then Champagnie also averages 11. So they've got 6 guys that average double figure scoring, players that are all threats to go off on any given night. Again, it's just how is everyone going to handle this moment? I mean, for all 10 of these players, it is their first NBA Finals experience. OG Anunoby won a title with the Raptors, but he was injured during that run. So this is really his first Finals experience. So it's just going to be exciting to see how all these guys handle the moment and the magnitude of this situation.
Yeah, and I do think that actually plays in the Spurs' favor a little bit. Sort of levels the playing field. No one having been on that stage before, but at the same time, you can't discount the human element, which people like to forget the fact that San Antonio has a team full of 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds, and they're flying into New York. These teams have been flying all across the country all season long, and they were on a college team that flew around the country last year. But most of these guys probably haven't been to New York City more than a handful of times. I think the draft is there, and then you go there to play a game once a year in MSG. But outside of that, a lot of these guys' first experience being in the Big Apple, and that is part of it too, because that is just the human element, the human experience that weighs on it too. If it's in downtown Manhattan and it's at the oldest venue for entertainment in the world, and the president, who's obviously a very polarizing, there's just a lot of eyeballs there, and these kids they have to show up. So yeah, Miles, that is the biggest question, I think, is how do they react?
As far as getting to the X's and O's of it, I think the first thing that I look to, even before I look at the guards thing, is how is Victor Wembanyama going to be used defensively in this series? Because again, New York, again, they have a ton of offensive threats, and there are different ways they can go, but the Spurs have a bit of a smaller starting lineup when you look at the 3 and the 4 spot with Vassell and Champagnie. And there were some things that they did tactically against the Thunder that worked, that I'm not so sure if they'll work in this series against New York. Like we saw in the last series, they put Victor Wembanyama on Hartenstein, the Alex Carusos, at times Lou Dort, the non-shooters of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the reason that was able to work is because they were able to have a guy like Devin Vassell, who's a wing player, guard Chet Holmgren on the perimeter. And Chet Holmgren, of course, we talked about how brutal his series was, his performance was. If Wembanyama is guarding the non-shooter in the Knicks lineup, which is Josh Hart, Vassell or Champagnie, one of them guarding Karl Anthony Towns, I don't think they're going to be able to get away with that as much as they were able to get away with Chet Holmgren in the last series.
No, that's a good point. Especially because you put Wemby on a non-shooter and you let everybody else fly around the perimeter and match up with rotations based on who has the ball and who's the closest guy to the ball. But with the Knicks, I'm actually interested to see if they stretch it out and bring Cat outside the perimeter, so that if Wemby is guarding him, because I don't imagine, like you said, for the reasons you just said, Miles, that they switch that up. If they should put Wemby on Cat, I don't really know what another option would be, because like you just said, that having him inside the perimeter and letting Wemby roam inside the paint isn't necessarily to their advantage. I would be interested to see if the Knicks kind of change up their scheme as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I think the Knicks could have an advantage there, because like you just said, if Wemby is on Towns, then Wemby is out of the paint and not where he's most valuable. But then if he's guarding Josh Hart, then Cat has a smaller guy on him, and then maybe you get the odd game where Josh Hart is knocking down threes like he's had at different moments throughout the season. Then it could be a problem. Ben, what do you think about how the Spurs should use their all-time defensive player of the year?
Yeah, it's a bit complicated, but I think they should look to try him on Josh Hurt, see how it goes. See, I mean, I know it could be tough. He could catch on fire if you get Josh Hurt, but maybe he won't totally beat you. See how that all goes. See, if you want to be like technically the guy on him, see if he, you know, if he has any confidence on taking any frees. So I would try that if I were them, but also sometimes I would think, one would have to be on Cat, like if Cat's, in the pain, just trying to slow down Cat for like being that, big assist guy, which he's, started to like get his teammates more involved, get more assists. We've seen as like a hub in these playoffs. So I think, you want to be a lot of in the paint if you can for shot blocking, rebounding for the Spurs. I think they'll look to do, but yeah, that's what I think on that, at least for now.
Now, on the reverse side of things, I'm sure what some people listening are probably saying is, what are you guys talking about? It could be silly to talk about. What questions do you have on Wemby on the defensive end? Question should be, how is Towns going to work defensively? Because obviously that's been the stigma throughout his career. Is Karl Anthony Towns is a negative defender in the playoffs? He can't guard pick and roll, and he's just a negative player on that end of the floor. But in these playoffs, not only has he become the point center on offense, he has done a very good job defensively. Whether it's one-on-one defense in the post, his help defense, I think, has been a lot better. Now, of course, Wemby's another monster, and he's that's going to be the biggest test that he's potentially had in his career because of how special the player Victor Wembanyama is. But I do think that Towns is capable of doing a good job on that end of the floor, especially considering that, on pick and roll defense, the Knicks might be able to get away with drop coverage on certain things because the Spurs point guards that are handling the ball in the pick and roll aren't the best 3-point shooters. Like you're going to have to live with Castle and Fox making threes.
Yeah, I would expect to see drop coverage a lot from the Knicks, especially early. Make them prove that they can do that and hurt you in that way. But I don't have a ton of confidence in Towns. I think the most important player in this series is Mitchell Robinson, broken finger and all, because in 3 games versus the Knicks this year, Wemby had 25 and 10. He averaged that in less than 30 minutes per game. So that's obviously going to be pretty boosted. And, Cat's only goal, I feel like, shouldn't be – it should just be to, limit his impact, limit his how effective Wemby is. If he goes for 40 and 10, you're going to lose it. But if he goes for 28 and 12, you got to have a better chance of winning. So just making like those 3 or 4 or 5 possessions more difficult and then having them result in a missed shot rather than an easy bucket or a kick out for 3, that's going to be what he needs to do. And I do think he's capable of doing that. But consistently stopping Wemby is going to be a problem, and that's why I think Mitchell Robinson is the most important player for them.
Yeah, Ben, I would totally agree with Nick on that one. Mitchell Robinson is definitely one of the X factors in this series because, on the graphic we showed season series tied at 1 apiece. They did split it. But this was the matchup in the NBA Cup championship, where the Knicks were able to get a victory. And one of the big reasons was because Mitchell Robinson was killing the Spurs on the glass when he was in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it could come down to the battle of the glass this series, and Spurs did a good job a lot against the Thunder and the glass. I'm curious to see if they learn from that, like, NBA Cup final say they do better there, if they could do well, rebound well, if Wemby and, Cornette and guys, maybe it gives them a boost past the winning this series. Who knows? But Mitchell Robinson, we've seen it's a great rebounder. Could be limited a bit with that injury, but I don't think could affect too much. But we'll see. He's definitely an important player in this series. So yeah, curious to see how that all goes.
Going back to what we kind of started talking about with the guard play of how, how is Jalen Brunson going to be able to handle, this defensive pressure of Stephon Castle, defending him. I'm very excited to see how that goes. Castle's certainly a great defender, but going into this series, I feel very confident about what Jalen Brunson can do because what we've seen throughout the last few years, even though he is a small point guard, and we'll talk about the whole storyline of small point guards can't win championships if they're your best player. What we've seen over the last several years, this year included, is that no matter what defense you put on him, he figures it out. He finds a way to figure it out. So, I think what the Spurs guards need to focus on is just making it difficult for Brunson, force him to take tough shots, find tough angles, and force him to make difficult plays. I mean, I would expect him to have a monster series. It just, it depends on if it's going to be efficient. If he's, putting up 30 points, but he's having to put up like 27 shots to do it in these games. If it's tough on him, I think that's the win for the Spurs defense.
The Knicks are playing so good right now that he could average more assists than points and be a non or unanimous MVP by the end of the series.
Yeah, I mean, and the Knicks role players. I mean, that's another thing that we got to talk about as well. Like those guys have all been on fire. Like I've talked about. That's probably aside from Towns being the point offensive player, them changing their offense to get all of those other guys involved offensively and all of them rolling and being as efficient as they are is a huge reason why they're in this position. But will they be able to keep it up in this series against the Spurs defense? Because again, they dominated the Eastern Conference playoffs, but again, this Spurs team is another beast than, especially defensively, than the Hawks, the Sixers, and the Cavs.
Yeah, I think Brunson's gonna be able to figure it out. I think you're right. Like, he's been able to figure out every test he's seen pretty much to this point, and with everybody else playing around him so well, it's like you send that early help, and all of a sudden it's just you're a step late to rotate, and that's all they need to get the shot off. That's all Mikal Bridges or Cad or OG needs to either drive past you and get to the rim or score three.
Yeah,
and who is going to keep Brunson in front? Like, is Castle going to be able to like be that point of attack guy and keep him out of the paint from getting everybody else involved? He's like probably one of the better suited guys in the league to do it, but that is a great, like, it's going to be so fun to watch.
Yeah, especially because we saw at times in the Thunder series, like they did a great job of guarding Shea overall in the series. But Ben, we saw times where this is a young team going through it for the first time, and we saw some instances where they weren't as poised, getting a little more frustrated in certain situations here. Will that come back to bite them at some point throughout this series against a Knicks team that they are super poised. You never see them get too high or too low in any situation.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be something I look out for, especially how they could be feeling when the series turns to the Garden. There's so many eyes on them, like big celebrity people, in the house. See, like possibly in New York, especially. So, I think, I think Spurs guys know they got to be composed, but they believe in themselves. As long as they think they can execute the right way, they think they could do all right. But yeah, I think the Knicks, they've always been a great composed team. I could expect it to continue with them here in the finals.
Now, these two teams, of course, we've talked a lot about their starting fives and the key players that are on both of these teams, but they've also gotten some big play from their benches throughout this run as well. Neither team plays an extremely heavy rotation, but those 6, 7, 8 men that come in off the bench for their teams do make an impact. For the Spurs, you look at Dylan Harper, Keldon Johnson, and Luke Cornett as those three main guys that come off the bench. That's a really good three to have off the bench. And New York, the names may not be crazy, but they've been great in the playoffs. When you look at Mitchell Robinson, Miles McBride, and then Landry Shamet coming off of that conference finals against the Cavs where he shot 90% from three, and his on-ball defense was, superb as well. So which team's bench do you guys think needs to make the bigger impact in this series?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I think the Knicks need their bench more because Wemby is such a cheat code that just having as many different attackers and like options as weapons, as many different weapons as possible, is. And they're the underdogs in the series, like we said coming in. The Spurs are younger, they're on the road, and they're still the favorites. So I would say that the Knicks, that tells you that their bench needs to step up more.
Yeah, no question about it. Ben, let's talk about X factors in this series. We mentioned Mitchell Robinson on the Knicks side of things, but how about for the Spurs? If the Spurs are going to get this done this season and win the title, who do you think needs to step up for them outside of, the Wembys of the world?
Yeah, good question. Sort of a tough question, but I think I would say, look, even their backup center, Luke Cornett, like it's gonna be important for the Spurs to step it up more than non-Wemby minutes. They did have some struggles and uh, some non-Wemby minutes against the Thunder, and hope they can somehow survive all right, and Luke Cornett can protect the rim well. And then other guys are really, stepping up with the scoring when Wemby's out of the line. So Cornett's one for me, and I think Champagnie too is another potential X factor depending on how well he shoots it. Like Champagnie, when the Spurs did beat the Knicks once in the regular season, he went off for free in that game. Like he's having some big shooting games for free. It, you know it. It could be an X factor now. Taking a game, something if he goes off one game, say.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that. So in this season series, which of course included the NBA Cup championship game where we mentioned the Knicks won because of their dominance on the boards. They played on New Year's Eve this year in San Antonio where the Spurs defeated the Knicks 134 to 132 in a game where, like you said, Ben, Julian Champagnie went up for 36 points and made 11 threes, 11 for 17 from three. So he just fired him up there and knocked a bunch in. Of course, Wemby was big. Fox had a big game in that one, 26 points. And he's someone that I think needs to have a big series as a player with experience, and this year an all-star player for them that has been kind of up and down. I thought that the game that he had against OKC in game 7 was big for him individually because a lot of, I think, in that series, he wasn't playing bad. I thought that he was getting a lot of good shots that he normally gets, and he was just missing them. But in game 7, he was starting to hit them a little bit. So if he can have a big impact as an all-star that can get to his spot, was just the clutch player of the year a few years ago and has been one of their go-to guys in the clutch, I think he is a huge X factor for the Spurs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to pick De'Aaron Fox when you made the question because he has to shoot better than 36% from the field, which is what he did in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals. But I also don't think that he was net negative during that time because, like you said, he just missed shots. His assist turnover ratio was dang near 7-1. I think it was 6.5 to like 1.4. So if he can keep that going and keep 13 guys in their rotation, six guys in their rotation, averaging 13 points per game, and he's not even one of them, because he's diming up guys and keeping their possessions alive or keeping good quality possessions by not turning the ball over, then that's a good role for him to fill. Just he'll hit a bit more shots, I would imagine, in the finals, better than 36%.
Yeah. On the Knicks side of things, something that when looking through the games that they played, throughout this regular season, something that stands out to me when looking at New York's offense was they put up a lot of threes, and a lot of that is because of Victor Wembanyama's presence on the inside. But in the 2 regular season games, in San Antonio, the Knicks shot 22 for 52 from three. They put up 52 threes. And then in the game at the Garden that I've referenced on here before, where New York blew out the Spurs, the Knicks put up 48 threes and made 17 of them. And, I think that game is something that the Spurs are going to have to try and overcome. Because, again, like you said, Nick, for a lot of these young guys on the Spurs, there hasn't been a whole lot of times where they've gone to Madison Square Garden and played the Knicks in MSG as a team. And the one time they did that this year, it was their worst offensive performance of the season, just 89 points, and got blown out by 25. And they really didn't get many great performances from their guys in that game. I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but the Spurs, you see the number here, post All-Star break in the regular season, Spurs were 24-4. A lot of people remember 3 of the losses were to the Denver Nuggets, and that's why a lot of people were excited to see that matchup in the second round. But that other loss was a blowout to the Knicks in the Garden. So how will San Antonio is going to have to try and overcome that? Because at this point, the only thing that they know about Madison Square Garden over the last 2 seasons was the blowout this year and last year on Christmas, where Mikal Bridges went for like 40+ points. That's their only remembrance of the Garden in the NBA right now.
I will say that goes for the Knicks too, because I don't remember, or I don't know if you guys remember, just a few months ago around the All-Star break was when the Knicks went west and had a really difficult road trip out west. And I know that they've gone into Cleveland and gone into Atlanta and taken these last 2 series, but they haven't been on a long flight out west and had to do that. And so that's a different experience for them too. So going to San Antonio for games 3 and 4, I think the same card, the same story goes for them, where it's going to be an adjustment.
Yeah, it's what's really fascinating with the Knicks, going into this series. I know we've mentioned, everything about how well they've been playing as far as the playoffs go, but that, the Spurs are, on paper, another level of competition with, how great they were in the regular season, the star power of Wemby on their team. Just which Knicks team are we going to get? Like, can the Knicks just continue what they've done in the playoffs? Are we going to see some reverting back to the regular season? Because I mean, at this point, the New York Knicks, like, when's the last time that they've lost a game? Let me go back and see the last time they lost a game. Like, again, they've won 11 in a row, and they haven't lost a game since April 23rd, game 3 to Atlanta. It's been a long time since they've lost a game, and they've been on another level since then. So, again, is this Knicks team going to just continue this surge that they've been on, or is this long period of rest, them playing against the Spurs, starting the series on the road for the first time in the playoffs? Is that going to be, the problem for them?
I was thinking the Knicks had a home court advantage, and that was wrong.
Oh, well, yeah, no, you're all good. Spurs got home court advantage with a better record during the regular season. But either way, I think, both things do matter here. I mean, either way, like, I think home court advantage is going to be important, but we've seen that both of these teams can win on the road. They're both definitely capable. Like, again, like you mentioned, New York is, they're bringing all these Knicks fans to the road games. We'll see how that works for the finals. Like, how many Knicks fans are going to be in San Antonio for the finals? And again, San Antonio has been able to get it done. They won 2 games in the loudest building in the league in OKC last series. I know we've talked about, the Garden, the world's most famous arena, the Mecca of basketball, how that might be different, but these 2 teams are going to have confidence that they can not only win at home, but win on the road as well in this series.
Yeah, totally true. I think a lot of confidence on both sides. It'll just be about, okay, how will it pay off, and when things don't go the best for these teams, how do they adjust, for the next game and all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, overall for this series, like, I think even going away from these 2 teams, I think the number one thing I'm like what that this series is going to determine, and what I'm really looking forward to just overall from a basketball standpoint, is regardless of what happens in this series, one stigma or storyline is going to come to an end with whoever wins this series. If the Knicks win this series, no one can say that you can't win a championship with a small guard leading the way with Jalen Brunson. If the Spurs win, the thing I've been saying all postseason long is that there has to be a point where they, usually you have to lose first before you have that run where you win. And if the Spurs win, that'll end that. This young team is going to go in the playoffs for the first time with all them together as a franchise, their first time in 7 years, and win a title. One of these two things is going to end after this series. And that is super exciting that a completely different narrative is going to come out in a few weeks after this series.
One thing that won't be ending is the streak of no back-to-back champions.
That is correct.
That streak will continue.
Yeah, which really is incredible. I mean, again, the amount of storylines we've talked about it a little bit, but just the fact that the Victor Wembanyama's first finals is, again, he's going to be playing in Madison Square Garden in the Knicks' first finals since 1999, where they had also lost to the Spurs. Like, it's just crazy how it all works, and I'm super excited to see what ends up happening.
Yeah,
we want to get into our predictions.
I just want to shout out Joey real quick as the only member of the pod who was actually alive during the last time these two teams were playing in the NBA Finals, because I was born that year, but not until August.
Oh, the veteran Joey. I'm sure Joey remembers that series very well when watching the games. But are we ready to get into our predictions for this series?
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right, here we go. So our predictions on this podcast, we as the four of us are split. Ben and I are going with the Knicks in 6. Joey and Nick are going with San Antonio in 6. Now, it's this, again, a very polarizing series. I know the Spurs are the favorite, and a lot of people are picking the Spurs to win the series. I find it very interesting that all four of us consensus think this is going to 6 games, not a 7-game instant classic here. Nick, why in the end do you go with the Spurs to win the finals?
I picked the Spurs because of Victor Wembanyama. There's no really other reason. I just think that his ability to impact the game in ways that others can't, and others have never been able to, and others may never will be able to, is going to be the trump card in this series. And honestly, I would have that justification for just about anybody they went up against, especially after they defeated the defending champs, even though they were all beat up. But I won't lie. Initially, my reaction was Knicks in 4 or 5 because of the experience factor. And I honestly think that Mitchell Robinson poses a huge problem that Vic hasn't seen yet in the playoffs. I think that could be like a really big factor in this series that like is different from all the other series that we've seen him go through this year so far. But ultimately, it was just the fact that I'm not betting against Wemby. That is the reason I picked the Spurs in 6. And the other reason I think that we all have it in 6 is because maybe I'm wrong on this, but this is just my feel is like this is a really difficult sort of series to evaluate because I don't know, the Spurs are untested and the Knicks are up and down. They're inconsistent. But it almost feels like one team does have the upper hand and we just don't really know which one yet. It kind of feels like if one team faces adversity, they will crumble. So I think that's kind of why we don't see it going 7.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely fair. Joey texted me his reasoning as well for going with the Spurs in 6. He kind of said similar things. I mean, the Spurs have been consistent all year, which, yes, they have 62-win regular season, second best record in the entire NBA, and they've done it again in the playoffs. And Joey says, honestly, he's probably ready to call Wemby the best player in the league, and we're going to see it play out in this series. And Ben and I, after talking after Game 7 of the series, kind of talked about it. Like I would probably, if we did our top 50 players list right now, and we'll do it heading into next season, it's hard for me not to put him number 1 right now because he's the only player right now that you can't really make a case against him. Like, what case can you make against him for being the best player in the league right now? I don't know right now.
Yeah, I mean, hard to make a case against. Talked about before, and yeah, I picked the Knicks to win in 6. Just because I think, this will be, tougher series for sure. Like, we saw them sweep the last two series. Be shocked that happened this time. The Spurs are definitely better than the 76ers and the Cavs. And I think, Wemby could have some big games, could help the Spurs take a few. But I think the Knicks, they're going to hit a good amount of timely shots. They're going to find ways to shoot it well for free. I think possibly take a good amount of shots for free as we saw them do in the regular season. And I think Mitchell Robinson could find a way to do a good job at times on Wemby. Cat can work out good as a facilitator. And I just think, like, if it got to a closeout game where the Knicks were up like 3-2 in the Garden in game 6, like, oh my goodness, that crowd would be going just absolutely crazy. And I think that could be enough to help the Knicks if they were like up 3-2 somehow after game 5, then they somehow win the finals on their home floor like that, possibly. But yeah, we'll see. I'd be happy with either team winning.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd be happy with either of these teams winning as well. But when with picking the series, I went with the Knicks in 6 as well. For a few reasons. Like the one thing, the which storyline will end after this series. I need to believe it or I need to see it to believe it with a team that has never been in the playoffs before until this year, just going all the way and winning the title in their first year. Like that has never happened before. And the whole you can't win with a small guard. I know Becky Hammon has said it and she's been getting criticized ever since she said the quote, a few years ago. But that's something we have seen before. Like Steph Curry and the Warriors, like we have seen this before. And and like I said before, even with the great defenders that the Spurs have, I feel very confident that Jalen Brunson can overcome it. Last year when the Knicks played the Celtics, Jalen Brunson was able to overcome the Drew Holiday, Derek White, all defensive backcourt and end up dominating the series. I feel pretty confident that he can handle Stephon Castle in this series. I trust the Knicks experience a lot more. They've gone through, the pain of losing in the playoffs before, which the Spurs have still not gone through yet. You trust their role players a little bit more since they have been playing so well recently. And, another thing is that I just think overall in the finals, we are due for an upset in the NBA finals. It's very interesting. Since the Cavs won the finals in 2016, we've only had one upset in the last 10 years in the NBA finals. Do you guys remember which one that was?
It had to be Curry versus Celtics.
Incorrect. I went upset based off of who was the higher seed, who had home court in the series.
Toronto.
Toronto?
No, it was Milwaukee beating Phoenix in 2021. That's the only technical upset that we have had over the last 10 years, just based on who had the better record during the regular season. We've only had one in 10 years. I think we are due to see it happen again this year. And I definitely, and I think it's realistic that it could happen. Like you said, Ben,
5 years just recently, because that was in 2021, Cavs in 2016. It could be due. We'll see.
You are correct. And the point you just made, Ben, if New York gets to have a game in Madison Square Garden in game 6 to win the title, I would, I'd feel pretty dumbfounded if they couldn't take care of that scenario. If they can't win it in 6 in that situation, I would think the Spurs would win in game 7 if that happened, but I think the Knicks will overall win it in 6 games. But I can't wait for this matchup, man. Like we just outlined, there's so many things that could happen. I expect so many things to happen. I expect close games, I expect close games in each building. I expect a couple of blowouts where we see one team dominating the other on both ends. Like I think we see everything in this series, and I can't wait. Like I truly think that this could be one of the all-time finals, and as definitely as far as anticipation goes for it, like, because even last year, although it did go 7 games, none of us expected the Pacers to continue their run to do it against the Thunder and go 7 games. Like, I think this, rightfully so, should be the most anticipated finals matchup, arguably since the Cavs Warriors.
I'm wondering what you guys think about. Since you guys both picked the Knicks, do you think they have a better chance of winning game 1 or 2? Because they have to take one of the first two if they're going to win in 6. Coming in, like I said, I mean, we were sitting here a couple months ago, not long. I'm looking at the paper right now. Knicks road
Yeah.
record a problem? Question mark. Like we were talking about it, and they haven't been West. So like, I want to know if you guys think that will be. I mean, we saw versus the Cavs, like they had some rust, and obviously they came back at the end of the fourth quarter in game 1 to win it. Do you guys think they have a better chance of winning game 1 or 2?
Ben, what do you think?
Uh, yeah, who knows? I'll say they have a better chance at winning game 2, but I never know. Game 1, the Spurs just start getting more tired later on. The Knicks have that energy for the recipe. They get it done in game 1, who knows? But yeah, I think the Knicks know what it takes to win on the road, but they're going out west for the first time in a while. The Knicks, right? They did drop some games out west in regular season. I'm not concerned totally that much with the Knicks, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it I'm not too concerned with just because again, I think we're seeing a completely different team here in the playoffs right now. And the rust factor, I think it could go two ways. I think on one hand, like, maybe they do have the rust because they've had the 9 days off, but I think that this Knicks team is so locked in right now to what their goal is and what they've been doing. And they all know in their heads that if they play out game 1 like they did game 1 against the Cavs in the last series, they're not going to have another comeback like that. There's very low chance that that's going to happen twice. So I think they're going to be very locked in to make sure that they get off to a good start and don't let that happen again. But what could very well happen here is game 1 we could get off to a very ugly start in game 1 of this series just because of the combination of the Knicks rust, the fact that they haven't played in 9 days, and the Spurs nerves going into this. Like, I would expect to see some nerves going into this for the first time with all eyes on the basketball world on them, all the faces, like you said, guys that are going to be there watching these games. Like, I think we could see a very ugly first quarter because these two teams haven't been in it before. The Spurs, young and inexperienced in this moment, and the Knicks just haven't played in a while. I think we could see a very ugly start to the series, and then it'll obviously pick up as it goes along.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I would bet on the Knicks to take the lid off the basket first and get their offense flowing. But then again, the Spurs defense is absolutely locked down. It's going to be incredible.
Do we all think that this will be a split after 2 games? Like, we're saying this right now. Would you guys be shocked if after the first 2 games one of these teams led 2-0?
No, I think it'll be split after 4.
Split after 4. Okay. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a bit surprised if one team was up too well. I'm feeling confident it could be a split after games 1 and 2, but yeah, I mean, you never know. We'll see what happens, but I think these teams trying to feel each other out and getting used to each other, that would surprise me. 1-1 one game and 1-1 another, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is I wouldn't be surprised if there was a split. Even though I'm picking the Knicks to win the series, I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs won the first 2 games at home. I think I'd be pretty surprised if New York took both games to start the series. Like, again, they've been playing so well lately, but if they took both to start the series, I mean, my goodness, that would be something else.
Yeah, if they rattle off 12 straight wins to win the finals, they go down. Yeah, one of the best championship teams of all time for sure.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, we've talked about their playoff winning streak. They're the 4th team ever in the playoffs to win 11 straight games, and they're the first team in the Eastern Conference to ever do that. So it's just going to be super
I
exciting.
will say just on that, because up to this point, I've had the notion that like this is just a product of living in 2026. Not everybody is quicker to give up, and that trickles all the way down to NBA basketball sometimes, and that entertainment part of it. And like, so I just have in my own head like divvied it up, added up to that. I've chalked it up to that. But if they win 12 straight, like I'd have to abandon that entire philosophy.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially against the
No,
Spurs team in Wembanyama after he's crying during the Western Conference Finals, like I would just have to give it up to Mike Brown and the Knicks at that point.
yeah, I just can't wait to see what happens. I guess, question that I have for you guys in regards to this series, which which team or which player do you think it would make the biggest impact for if they won the series? Of course, looking at the stars, like if winning this particular finals, do you think that would mean more for the legacy of Jalen Brunson, who, has emerged as the hero of New York over the last few years, or Victor Wembanyama, this prodigy who could seriously go down by the end of his career as the greatest player to ever play the game, winning the title in his third year in the NBA?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it would really mean a lot for both. I'd be quite impressed for either one. I would lean Jalen Brunson now because, I mean, I think, man, the Knicks got such a good opportunity this year. They really need to take advantage and win this finals. And, like, man, Jalen Brunson could be winning stuff for free in New York City if he delivers a finals win, helps lead them to something like that. And then, yeah, it would just help his legacy a lot. He's already proven to be a great player, but getting a ring, one championship, added on to that now would be really, you know, just impressive for the guy. And, only like small guard I've seen, help lead a team to a championship. Like in recent years, it's been Steph Curry. He's obviously a legend and one of the all-time greats to really change the game. It'd be, yeah, I'd be happy for Brunson if he somehow helped lead the Knicks to doing it.
Yeah, when you put it like that, just quickly before you go, Ben or Nick, like with if Brunson won the title this year, like I've never actually thought about this much before, but if he won the title this year, leading the Knicks to the title, like he would automatically have to go down as one of an all-time point guard status. Like there are guys out there, like he's already made it further than a guy like Steve Nash never made the final, even though he was a two-time MVP. Chris Paul made the finals very, late in his career in that, with the Suns, but he never won a title. Like if Brunson could win a title this year, he could immediately be thrown in as one of the best point guards, especially of this era, but just of all time at that position.
I would I'll go the other way and say Wemby. I do think that it would mean like memorialization for Wembanyama, or I'm sorry, for Brunson as like the king of New York. He would get, they might build a skyscraper and name it the Brunson Tower if he's able to deliver that. But at the same time, there's Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby. Like all of these guys are going to come back in 20 years, and it's going to be great for them regardless of whether or not they win it. I do think like being a small point guard and being the best player on the team, like that is a huge narrative, and it would mean so much for that narrative and Brunson and the city. But I think like, and you look back in 15, 20 years, if Wemby's able to get over the hump in his third year with this team, Dylan Harper as a rookie, Steph Castle as a second-year player, and beat the team that's running in 8 straight wins and go to Madison Square Garden and like get your first ring that way, and then who knows what happens in the next 5 years if he gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more of them. I think like when it's all said and done, this would mean more to Wemby just for that reason. But Brunson too.
Yeah, yeah. Either way, it's going to be major for the league. If the Spurs win the title this year with all these guys in their first year in the playoffs, I mean, just good luck to the league. Like we've already talked about the Thunder Spurs matchup and what that could mean for the league, but if San Antonio just ran through in year one to do this, I can't even imagine that still. That's why I'm picking the Knicks, because I can't even imagine seeing this happen if they were able to do it. But I just can't wait for it. Man, this is just gonna be great. The finals are always series where these star players get etched into history based on their performance and if their team does win the whole thing. But also kind of like you said, these some role players get forever memorialized in the city. Like you think of different like Bobby Portis in Milwaukee will always be remembered in Milwaukee for that. Obviously, Kawhi is a more, or Fred VanVleet in Toronto,
I mean, we
a
got
guy,
J.R. Smith and Delly and Tristan Thompson.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean Livingston, Barbosa in Golden State, like Boris Diaw in San Antonio. That's another thing, by the way. The Knicks and the Spurs are probably the two best teams in the league. Yeah, Alex Caruso as well. These are probably the two best teams in the league as far as the former players and alumni that show up to the games. Like the Spurs, you see David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili at every game. And of course, the Knicks alumni row with the guys that had made the finals previously with the Allen Houstons, Latrell Sprewell, Patrick Ewing, obviously Walt Frazier, like all these all-time players. Like, I wonder what other of these random guys like will show up. Like, we don't really see much of Tony Parker anymore, but could we see Tony Parker? Kawhi? Could we see a current player like come back for one of these teams? Like, this could be super fun of seeing which former alumni come out for
Maybe
this match.
J.R. Smith comes out for the Knicks, or
who? JR, you said, Ben?
Yeah,
we've seen him before. He's been at some before.
And Shump.
Yeah, Shumpert. Obviously Carmelo, and he's been at some before, but
that's a good point, Miles. They definitely do have the two best alumni. I don't think that's meaningless.
No, especially if the guys travel on the road. And that's another thing where I think the Knicks could have an advantage here. Again, they we said this finals atmosphere, it's going to be an incredible finals atmosphere in both of these buildings. But for the Knicks, they have gone on the road with their fans for all these games. I should say the fans have gone on the road with them for the previous rounds. And if they do that again in San Antonio, it's not going to feel as much like a giant road game. Like even Josh Hart said it in the Eastern Conference, trophy presentation in the, after the last game. Like everywhere we go, it feels like the Garden. And if in the finals, every game feels like a home game for them, that definitely gives them a major advantage.
For sure. Yeah.
But I guess, where I was getting to before all that, what role player do you think will be etched in their city's history for the rest of time after this series? Like, I know, let's go away from starters for this, and even like Dylan Harper, and for the Spurs, because he's gonna end up being a star player. But these other bench guys, do you think that there's some random guy that's gonna come in here, maybe for a few minutes, and just light it up and make a name for himself during this series, and just be, it goes down as a random role player performance in this series, like a Mike Miller for the Heat in like 2013.
I mean, the obvious pick is Jose Alvarado if it goes well for him. Being from New York, being traded there halfway through the year, towards the end of the bench, one of the smallest guys on the team, one of the most high effort, impactful player guys. It would be him for sure. If he can have 2 or 3 good games that he goes for double-digit scoring nights and has a couple of steals. They would obviously commemorate him in a big way, I think.
Ben, you think there's anyone on the Spurs that could get up to the level of this? Like, who knows? Maybe there's some foul trouble and we get Mason Plumlee minutes or something, and he gets like a bunch of rebounds. Like any random guys like that you think that could have a crazy impact in this series and spare minutes?
I mean, yeah, hard to tell with that. I mean, I think Carter Bryant's only a rookie, but his energy's crazy at any points. Maybe him or Luke Cornett's doing well. The non-Wemby minutes, he's already looked like a hero after that block in Game 7 against the Thunder. Cornett maybe could get honored too if he has a big series.
Lindy Waters.
Joey's boy. He always likes to call him Linda Waters. That'd be great. This is just gonna be great, and especially because there are so many players, that are going through this finals experience for the first time. Like on these teams, there are only 4 players that have played in the finals before. Harrison Barnes, Luke Cornett, the two champions. Barnes, who won it in 2015. Like, I wonder if he wins it this year and he wins 2 titles separated by 11 years, if that's close to any record as far as the longest duration between championships for a player.
That's a good question. Yeah, we'll have to look that up for the next episode and get back to
Yeah.
the viewers.
Yeah. And then even guys that, been there before and didn't win it. Kelly Olynyk, who's on the end of the Spurs bench, made it with the Heat back in the bubble. And then the only guy on the Knicks with finals experience is Jordan Clarkson, was on the 2018 Cavs team, with, LeBron that year. But besides that, all these guys, it's their first time going through it. And it's going to be exciting. And I just can't wait for Wednesday, man. Wednesday night, game 1 in San Antonio. Knicks Spurs, game 1 of the 2026 NBA Finals, 8:30 on ABC. After that game, hopefully we have a surprise for you guys on the next podcast. It's doing an in-person podcast, which we did a couple times throughout the finals last year. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for game 1. What do you guys think is going to happen in game 1? We've been doing, predictions for all these games throughout the playoffs. What do you guys think you think will happen here in game 1 on Wednesday?
I'll go with a hot take, and I'll say the Knicks come out super slow. Their West Coast plane ride catches up to them. 9 days off doesn't suit well, and the Spurs have not looked like they've slowed down since the All-Star break. So I'll say that they win by 15-20.
That's not a bad prediction at all, because at home throughout these playoffs, they've been incredible as well. Like their last 2 games against the Thunder in that series, they won by 21 and 27. They had multiple 30-point wins against Minnesota in the second round. That definitely is a legit possibility. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah. Right now I'll go with the Spurs. They'll take game 1, I think. I think they win it by I think they win it in kind of a close game, since both teams are trying to feel each other out, but they just find a way. Wemby gets aggressive enough in game 1, and the Spurs just sort of, I don't know, start filling out the Knicks better at first. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with the Spurs in game 1. I do think that it's going to be a very ugly first quarter, efficiency wise and maybe turnover wise. I think it might be one of the more ugly quarters that we see in the playoffs this first quarter, because of, the things I mentioned before. But I do think the Spurs will win it. Gosh, it's a toss up for me right now between whether the Spurs win by 20 plus, or we get right back into it and this goes to overtime or something and Spurs win. I don't know what to pick right now. I'll say that the Spurs will win this in a blowout.
Yeah, I agree.
Against the Knicks. But all of us going with the Spurs in game 1. But again, overall for the series, Ben and I have got the Knicks in 6. Joey and Nick have the Spurs in 6. You guys have anything else before we get out of here and get ready for game 1?
As long as New York doesn't win, I'll be happy.
Oh man, cannot wait. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe for more NBA playoff content. Let them know. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy game 1 of the finals, and we will catch you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.